I think that he spoke to something that's missing in our politics, but I think that he made a mistake in that speech by taking a lot of right-wing myths for granted and saying that Democrats need to respond to them. I mean, one thing he talked about was, well, you know, is it really such a problem saying under God in the Pledge of Allegiance? But, you know, it's a myth that there's any kind of organized opposition to the phrase under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, I certainly wish that in 1954 they thought better of adding that, you know, as they've added phrases like that so many times in kind of moments of, you know, national panic and insecurity. But the case that went before the court to take that phrase out, right, it was just one guy. It wasn't the ACLU, it wasn't People for the American Way, it wasn't Americans United for Separation of Church and State. You know, they're concerned with things that are much bigger. And in fact, you know, Americans United groaned the day the Ninth Circuit ruled against the Pledge of Allegiance. But, you know, because they knew that soon enough, you know, the Republicans would be saying the Democratic Party wants to take under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. And sure enough, in Ohio, people were getting flyers under their doors, you know, saying the Democratic Party wants to destroy marriage by legalizing gay marriage, ban the Pledge of Allegiance because it mentions God, and support abortion on demand. So to me, and I think that what Obama missed and what I think has to happen is that this isn't an argument about whether you can say God in public. Of course you can. It's not even an argument about whether you can pray in school. There's actually, from everyone I've talked to, from the experts I've talked to who study this, there's more prayer in school now than there ever has been in our modern history. You know, the evangelical resurgence that's happening all over America is also happening in public schools. And so you have kids forming Bible clubs, praying around the flagpole, you know, distributing religious tracts, which they're allowed to do because, you know, they have free speech rights like everyone else. And when teachers have said you can't distribute that religious literature in forums when people can distribute other kinds of literature, the ACLU steps in and defends them. So this isn't an argument about whether we're going to banish God from public life. It's an argument about whether we're going to have state-supported prayer, about whether we're going to have school-led prayer, about whether there's going to be religion imposed in the schools. And that's where the argument has to happen. I mean, otherwise, you know, when this Ninth Circuit decision came down, the Senate unanimously condemned it. And you guys probably remember the spectacle of all of the senators, you know, going onto the Capitol steps and saying, under God. But it doesn't matter. I mean, you know, kind of Democrats can bend over backwards to show their piety and their patriotism. But I think as long as they take a lot of these myths for granted instead of arguing over where, you know, arguing where the kind of real divisions in American life really are, I think that they will keep they won't win over anyone on the other side, and they'll just kind of dispirit their own supporters.
I read your book and I was very impressed with it. I want to thank you.
Thank you.
But my main question, the question I've been thinking about is, what is the title of your next book? And are you going to follow through with this idea or going on to other needed areas?
Well, my next book, assuming that I sell it, is going to, what I want to write about next is about the globalization of the culture war, and especially the global battle over reproductive rights. Because what you're seeing now, you know, this book is kind of about domestic policy, but what you're seeing now is a lot of these fights that we have in this country about abortion, birth control, HIV prevention are now spreading all over the world. And so, you know, in Africa right now, through a kind of alliance of domestic fundamentalists in Africa, you know, evangelical Christianity and radical Islam are both growing very, very quickly, and kind of American missionary organizations, you're seeing a real attack on, say, the promotion of condoms to prevent HIV. And, you know, 2/3 of the money that Bush allocated for sexual transmission, for the prevention of sexual transmission of HIV, now goes to abstinence-only programs that disparage condoms and tell people they don't work. And it's been really catastrophic. And, you know, I read the paragraph about that I think the operative battle in the world is not between Christianity and Islam, but between modernism and pluralism on the one hand, and kind of fundamentalism and tribalism on the other hand. And so in this battle, fundamentalist Christianity and fundamentalist Islam are really on the same side. And one of the places where that's kind of the starkest is at the United Nations. If you spend any time at the United Nations, whenever these fights over international women's rights treaties or children's rights treaties or reproductive health organizations come up, you see a kind of very clarifying alliance. You see the America, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Sudan bloc on the one hand, and the Vatican, and then kind of our sensible allies in the Western world on the other. And so we've worked with these countries repeatedly to kind of jettison anything that would, help women in developing countries kind of gain control of their lives and their reproductive health. And if you look at so many of the problems that are plaguing the world now, from like environmental destruction to the kind of growing slums in a lot of poor countries, to poverty, war, and kind of destabilization when parents can't educate their children, the answer to so many of these problems lies with the emancipation of women and giving women the freedom to kind of control their own families so that they can take care of the children that they have. So,
thank you. I'm looking forward to your next book.
Hello, thanks for coming today and giving us your insights. I've always been curious as to how should or can our society both respect and accommodate this subculture is very organized, but it's also fundamentally at odds with the democratic process itself. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a difficult thing because, obviously, the rights of Christian nationalists, the rights of fundamentalists have to be protected, and I think that the ACLU and other kind of organizations that are constantly demonized do a lot of work in that direction, right? When, there's a case in, I don't even remember it was one of the southern states, when a woman who called herself the Lone Ranger of the Manger comes and sets up nativity scenes in public places. And she set one up in front of a Capitol building in a place where other people were allowed to erect displays. And the local government told her she couldn't, or the state government told her she couldn't do it. And the ACLU came in and defended her and said, if you're going to give people the right to speech here, you can't decide then what kind of speech is permissible and what kind isn't. So part of it is just making the argument that this is not about banning Christianity or imposing this kind of godless public square, but a lot of the arguments from the other side are somewhat disingenuous, I find, because, you've probably all heard a lot about the so-called war on Christians, and I remember I went to a conference earlier this year called the War on Christianity, or you might remember the War on Christmas, because you remember how we didn't have Christmas last year. So there's this idea that Christians are under siege and that any attempts to kind of promote church-state separation are themselves part of a war on Christianity. One of the things that this movement argues is that secularism is itself a religion, and so it needs to be balanced with kind of equal deference to Christianity. And so, in this kind of argument, which is almost this kind of radical relativism, actually, this like leveling in which all truths are kind of given equal value for a time, comes into play with things like creationism. Well, let's teach both. That's fair. And if not, then you're suppressing us. Then it's a war. Then it's a war on Christianity, because you're, elevating Darwinism over the Book of Genesis. And so, to a certain extent, I don't know how much compromise there is with that. I think that all you can do in that case, or all we can do, is assert again the Enlightenment, that there is such a thing as rational scientific truth, and that we have ways that we arrive at it, and that we might not be able to fully grasp it, but that doesn't mean that all truths are that doesn't mean that there's no such thing as truth and that everybody can construct their own reality. But I don't see there being, I often do Christian radio shows since this book has come out, and a lot of the right-wing radio hosts have said, well, I agree that we live in two parallel realities and there's no compromise and there's no middle ground. And so that might not